Hey, Shalom Akim, Shalom, Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, great millstone for teaching us his truth. And salutations to the sincere Akim and Akwatham. And listen, may the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I kind of just wanted to talk about um, how mothers can destroy their sons with their words. So essentially, just something to be mindful of. And also, this will be just, I guess, a little bit of an exhortation to essentially not to think, essentially too lowly, of yourself. If the shoe fits, wear it, right? Not a lot of us come from that situation, but a lot of us grew up in households where essentially, or we even grew up in a culture, because in this day and age, what Esau has done is, essentially has broken apart and destroyed the nuclear family, right? And taking the fathers out of the household and essentially leaving that responsibility and leaving that mindset for the mothers to do, and what has happened, with that breakdown of our family structure and our family households is that the women have been essentially propped up as, the head of the household, and it has left, raising children in tatters. So we have a lot of our children that are essentially they're messed up mentally, right? So what happens now, or you can even have situations where, the mothers are basically have had disagreements with the father, and what happens is that emotion is now brought upon the children, right? So I kind of just wanted to do a little bit of exhortation on that, the importance of, um, I guess, good encouragement, right? As well as not to essentially think too lowly of yourselves, because a lot of us come from those different kinds of households where, that does happen, and then it causes us to think very, very lowly, of ourselves. So it's going to be a little bit of upliftment, with this lesson, and I pray and sincerely hope that this lesson is edifying. So um I guess I'll just start here, because with this, knowing that, these thoughts can come into your mind, and it's just a little bit of a boost to, because the world tears down, the image of the Israelite man, starting with Yahweh Shai, because his image is essentially crossed out, in this Babylon the Great, spiritual Egypt, right? And that image of the Israelite man is something that is not respected. You're kind of just the butt of every joke, right? What do they commonly say? They say niggas ain't shit, right? So not to adopt that mindset, but adopt a healthy, masculine, mind frame, right? Um, so I guess I'll just start here in Luke chapter 22. Is to give you brothers and few sisters who may listen some strength, right? So it says Luke 22 verse 32. I'll start at verse 31, and it says, "And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, Yahushua speaking, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. When thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren." Right? So this is a point, that some things that we go through, whatever experiences we go through, those words that your mothers use, they can essentially pierce you, right? And like, those words can kind of like, drag you down, but the word, these words of the scriptures and knowing the history and all that kind of stuff is supposed to be able to cultivate and lift us and bring us back up, right? That's why it's good to actually be around, brethren, and be around, as the scriptures say, be continually with a godly man, right? So before I start, I kind of just wanted to read just this short snippet of an article that I came across, and it was about Alexander the Great, right? And so I wanted to read something a little bit about his upbringing, right? Because, we come from a culture, a lot of us, come from, this so-called, black, culture, right? Israelite, not, it's not even Israelite culture, but, as Israelites, we come from this degenerate culture, I should say. Let me put it like that, where essentially there is no father in the household, and the mother is essentially raising the children, and a lot of that negative energy is transferred onto the children, where you think that whatever situations and circumstances that may have rose, it leads to a son or a daughter, you might feel neglected because of the words, the piercing words that mothers might use, right? And it might be very, very detrimental to how you think about your self-esteem and your self-image and so on and so forth, right? Because our people don't like themselves. Let's just be honest. People have self-esteem issues, right? Um so I just wanted to read this thing on Alexander the Great. So here it says, an unusual upbringing. It says Alexander was born in 356 BC in the city of Pella, an ancient capital of Macedonia. His parents were Philip II and Olympias of Epirus, sorry. From his father, um, Alexander learned the art, or I probably should say arts, and it says, and science of warfare, but historians agree that his mother was far more influential in his life. It says, for her, Alexander inherited a profound love of learning and also a fiery, sometimes ruthless nature, right? So, um, going on here, it says, during his early years, Alexander's mother constantly told him that he was part God. Her family had long claimed to be descendants of Achilles, the demigod, and at one point she even told him that his father was Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, right? So of course it says Achilles was a myth, Zeus was fiction, and Alexander was a mortal man like any other, right? But nonetheless, the teachings affecting Alexander, right? So I'm reading this to show you that, his mother had a very, very strong impact upon, how he saw himself in his education, right? Those words are very, very nurturing, towards him, right? And I want to just grab, this quick account, here. I'm kind of just freestyling the lesson a little bit. I didn't really put anything together per se, right? But I kind of just wanted to discuss the importance of the nurturing of women and that role that plays, and also not to think of yourself too lowly, like if the shoe fits, wear it, of course, right? To kind of lift up, brethren spirits, right? So let me just go to just bear with me on this. Let me just find the account. This is the book of Second Maccabees, chapter 7. I'll start at verse 20, and it says, hold on. Okay, I'll start at verse 20, and it says, but the mother was marvelous above all, and all worthy of honorable memory, for when she saw her 7 sons slain within the space of 1 day, she bare it with a good courage, because of the hope she had in the Lord. Yea, she exhorted every one of them in her own language, filled with courageous spirits, and stirring up her womanish thoughts, and with a manly stomach, she said unto them, I cannot tell how ye came into my womb, for I neither gave you breath nor life, neither it was I that formed the members of every one of you, but doubtless the Creator of the world, who formed the generation of men and found out the beginnings of all things, will also of his mercy give you breath and life again, as ye now regard not your own selves, but for the law's sake, right? So she was in a situation where she saw her own son slain, right? And women are the weaker vessel, but the point is, even in a situation like that, she had the mind frame to essentially, for her sons to be courageous and die mindfully, right? She had the mentality of, essentially encouraging them rather than tearing them down, right? She didn't try to sow doubt and fear and disgust and what's the word I'm looking for? Those sorts of, like, negative things that essentially Jake suffers from today, because they have a very broken relationship with their parents, first their father, and and then what also results from that is an unhealthy relationships with mothers also, right? She didn't do that. She didn't tear them down, right? And that is one of the things that commonly, a lot of our people, suffer from, right? They don't destroy their children, um, physically, they destroy them, mentally, right? And thinking that you ain't shit. And that vibration trickles down today when you think about, a lot of our women, because a lot of our women have also adopted that mindset of, niggas ain't shit, right? So the objective is that, women, mothers do play a very, very important role in the nurturing of your children, right? That's why it's always good to have, a woman with a man of understanding, right? But in this day and age, this is just like the scriptures talk about, the condition of the battle, right? So through this, I'm kind of segueing this into my next point, when it comes to, for brothers to not think of yourself too lowly, right? Whether you were subject to this kind of situation, or you were subject to a different type of situation, but the results were still the same. It may not have been a mother, it probably was somebody else, like another family member, or a woman that you dealt with, right? Could have been a grandmother, a grandparent, or it could have been a father. I don't know. Like, if the shoe fits, like I said, wear it, right? But the point is to not think of yourself too lowly, right? We are very, we're a royal people, as a matter of fact, I'll get that. Okay, this is Deuteronomy 14, verse 2, and it says, "For thou art an holy people unto the Lord Yahweh thy power, and the Lord Yahweh hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself, above all the nations that are upon the earth." Right, so let me get that word peculiar, just to get more understanding there. Etymology, one sec. Okay, peculiar, it means belonging exclusively to one person, right? The scriptures say that Israel and the Lord hath not dealt so with any other nation. As for the judgments, the heathen have not known them. Praise ye the Lord, right? To roughly paraphrase, right? So it says special, it says particular, it says in the Latin peculiaris, of one's own property. It says flock, related to pieces, meaning cattle, right? So we're the Lord's chosen people, right? So, oh, hold on, there's more. It says distinguished, particular. It says special, select, right? So we're a special people unto the Lord, right? We're a royal, we're a royal priesthood. Like, that's something we have to, like, constantly remind ourselves, because through our different, whatever that walk of life that you might have come from, we didn't grow up with this understanding of knowing who we are, right? We didn't grow up with this understanding of knowing we were from a royal bloodline, and this is the understanding, and he was a heathen. Alexander the Great was a heathen. He's not a he's not the chosen, specific, special people of the Most High, right? Doesn't it say that we are? Let me get that. Hold on. It shows you how important nurturing is. How important also the family structure is, right? Where was I going? Okay, Psalms, because it says that in Psalms that we are gods, right? So this is a type of lesson to kind of break out of that, that lowliness spirit, and thinking of that we're so and when I say lowly, I mean like lowly in terms of thinking that we're inferior. We're not inferior people. We are a very chosen special people, right? This is Psalms 82 verse, hold on, Psalms 82 verse 6, and it says, I have said ye are gods, and ye are all, and all of you are children of the Most High, right? So we are gods, right? Lowercase g, right? We are a special people unto the Yahweh Bashem Shai. We're not regular folks. And if when you go to a different, if you let me sound that out. Even when you look at how the other nations view us, a lot of these women, if you look at them, a lot of these heathen women notice there is something peculiar about us as a nation, right? They notice how something is very valuable unto us as a nation, right? Because we are a chosen species. We are the stronger, right? We are the most mighty. The scriptures talk about how Jacob was a plain man dwelling in tents. When you go into that word plain, it refers to somebody who has integrity. It refers to somebody who has morals. It refers to someone who has character. It refers to someone who has scruples, someone who is upright, right? These other nations are not, they don't have that, right? These other nations don't have that skill, the talent, the intellect, right? Like, that Jake has, right? But we dilly dally and mingle around the heathen, and we start behaving like them, right? But not to go too off topic, the point is, we are an upright chosen people, right? That's our name, Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel, right? A prince of the power, right? So that's really the point, is to invigorate that sense of and I hate to say the word pride. I kind of, it's to create a certain level of superiority, right? And knowing that we are of a choice species, right? To know that we are of we're a special people above these other nations. We're not like these other nations. The other nations don't know the Lord. They don't know the ways of Yahweh Bashem Shai. The Lord only gave that to us, and us only, right? So you know let me go to Genesis. This is Genesis 41 verse 38, and it says in the AMP, I'll just read it here, and it says, so Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, a man equal to Joseph, in whom is the spirit of the in whom is the divine spirit of the Most High? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since your power has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and as clear-headed and as wise as you are. You shall have charge over my house, and all my people shall be governed according to your word, and pay respect to you with reverence, with submission and obedience in all matters of the throne will I be greater than you in Egypt, right? So Joseph was given favor, because he had the spirit of the Lord dwelling in him, right? And he kept and that's another thing also, because I mentioned that thing about how the word plain, when you go into the word, it refers to someone who has morals and integrity, and Joseph exemplified that. When he had, I don't want to say he had the opportunity, but when the Pharaoh's wife tried to hit on him, he displayed a sense of integrity. He didn't lay down with her, right? So it shows you he knew he was a man of character. He was a man of morals. He was intelligent, right? When Yahushua was in the temple, he was confounding people, right? And that's another thing, and that's another aspect of not feeling too low down in the spirit, right? Is because we have an unction to know all things, right? This ability, to get into things, and that's part of being wise and being in the stead of our forefathers, and remembering the ways of our forefathers, because our forefathers weren't just regular dudes. They weren't like Pookies and Ray Rays and Jermaine down the block, and they weren't like the degenerates that you see Esau portrays us to be on TV. They were very, very honorable men who had character and morals, and most of all, they had a fear of the Lord, right? Let me go to Proverbs, right? Because that's what makes us very distinguished, is the fact that we have that fear of the Lord, right? We don't conduct ourselves as these other people. This is Proverbs 1, excuse me, Proverbs 1 verse I'll start at verse 7. And it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I'll just jump down to verse 9, and it says, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head, and chains about thy necks, right? That's one of the things that having wisdom does. It adorns us, kind of like how cosmetics adorns a woman's face. Wisdom adorns a man's face and makes it shine. Joseph was shining. Yahushua was shining, right? Even Yahushua said, he even said a candle that is let me get it. I think it's in Matthew. Matthew chapter 5 verse 14, and it says, ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and give it light unto all that are in the house. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven, right? Let me go into that word light. Let me see what that says actually. Kind of curious about that. Okay, the word is phos. I'm guessing that's where you get like the word like photos and stuff, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So it says emitted by a lamp, right? And this word is a lamp unto our feet. I think King David said that, if I'm not mistaken, to paraphrase, right? It says of truth and its knowledge, together with the spiritual purity associated with it, right? The power. Oh, it says the power of understanding moral and spiritual truth, right? So this is what gives us light. This is what gives us this is what makes us illuminated. And it says that in the scriptures, turn thou, O Jacob, that thou mayest be illuminated, right? There's nothing wrong with being illuminated in righteousness, and that's the vibration I'm trying to push through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bashem El Shai, right? Pushing that illumination, right? Don't get too weighed down by I know these things happen because the earthly tabernacle weighs down the soul, and we get these thoughts sometimes, but just to remember the ways of our forefathers, to actually cultivate a spirit of healthy confidence and of healthy you know what's the word I'm looking for, you know cutting that that depressive state of mind, and not thinking of yourself too lowly, so to speak. I can't find all the words at the moment, but I hope you brothers know what I'm catching on to, right? So um that's pretty much it. I didn't really, I kind of just wanted to hit 2 points at once. Just to recap, how mothers essentially destroy their sons, right? With their words, right? But the objective is to cultivate a mentality of not being too weighed down by those experiences, and not thinking of yourself too lowly, right? It's very important that we think of ourselves as people of substance and of value, right? The Lord said you make a man more precious than fine gold, right? So just to keep the spirit and the flame going, but Lord's will is always, I know I kind of ramble, but Lord's will is always, this lesson was edifying. So I give all praises, glory and honor to Yahweh Bashem Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.